And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, November 26th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see any thought or comment be acknowledged by myself throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to talk about today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap last night's game between the Chargers and the Ravens. The Ravens picking up the victory in that matchup. Then we'll also get into something I talked about a little bit on Friday, but I'll go into more depth today, as well as talking about the Giants' loss, and that's Daniel Jones getting released. But we'll also talk about the Giants and their effort against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and some things that Malik Neighbors had to say after the game, and just how the future kind of looks right now for the Giants. We'll also get into talking about the Texans and their loss to the Titans. That was one of the upsets of the weekend that I wanted to get into, so we'll talk about that. We'll also get into talking about the Jets as well, as they are looking for a new head coach and GM, getting a little bit of a head start on that. Also talk about Aaron Rodgers' future as well, because there were some things that came up over the last couple of days, last few days, and I wanted to discuss that, and then get into my power rankings, ranking my top 5 teams after Week 12. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing last night's game between the Chargers and the Ravens. And these two teams did match up against each other last year. The Ravens won that, and once again, the Ravens picked up the victory, winning 30-23, and they improved to 8-4 on the season, so they get back on track. And the Chargers did score a touchdown towards the end to make it a little bit closer, and they did go for the onside kick, but they were not able to recover it. Isaiah Likely recovered the onside kick, and I had him in fantasy last night, and he did nothing. He did not help me out. I was able to win one of two matchups that I still had a chance to win in. I ended up winning by a point in one, but I ended up losing by 10 in another league. And I need to win out. And if I don't win out, I'm missing out on the playoffs. And my team is pretty good in that league. So it would definitely be disappointing. I'm the third highest scorer in the league, and 6 teams make the playoffs, but right now I'm 7th. So hopefully I can win my last 2 and I get in. But yeah, going back to this game though, enough of my complaining when it comes to fantasy. The Chargers actually went right down the field on their first drive of the game. It was an impressive drive. Justin Herbert scores a rushing touchdown, and Chargers go up 7-0. They went 9 plays, 70 yards, and then they were up 10-0. So it was 10-0 after the first quarter, and then the Ravens started to play like the Ravens offensively. They got it going. They got on the board with a nice drive. Lamar Jackson had a 10-yard rushing touchdown. Derrick Henry actually had a rushing touchdown on the previous play, but that was an illegal formation. So he actually got held out of the end zone last night. And he's been an auto touchdown all year, but not last night. So yeah, Lamar Jackson ends up scoring a rushing touchdown. That made it 10-7. Chargers then punted on their next drive. And then Lamar Jackson, a great throw to Rashad Bateman, a 40-yard touchdown. There was a pass interference on the play. Of course, that got declined. And the Ravens went up 14-10. And then Cameron Dicker, before the end of the first half, kicked the field goal to make it 14-13. And then in the second half, you had a Justin Tucker 45-yard field goal on the Ravens' first drive. That put them up by 4. Chargers then answered with another field goal. Cameron Dicker, 52-yarder. And then the Ravens scored yet another touchdown, and this time it was to Mark Andrews. It was interesting because he was clearly in bounds, but for some reason the official that was right there ruled him out of bounds. He got 2 feet in. I don't know what that official was looking at. It was the play was right in front of him, and that was easily a touchdown. So they had to, discuss it, but it ultimately got overturned, and he uh, he ended up scoring. Ravens actually went for two. Ravens went for two. Went for it on fourth down a couple of times on that drive. So yeah, that put them up by 7. And actually, the interesting thing is they went for 2 and they didn't get it. Now it didn't end up costing them, but you know, I know you're trying to put yourselves up by 2 scores, but I mean, just take the 2-point conversion or take the extra point at that point, because then the other team has to go down the field, score a touchdown, and get the 2, which is not easy. So, but it ended up not affecting them. Chargers then punted again. Ravens then went down the field, scored another touchdown. This was not Derrick Henry. This was a Justice Hill 51-yard touchdown. So that put them up by 2 scores, and that was basically the end of it. The Chargers did tack on a touchdown at the end to make it a little bit closer. Gus Edwards, a 1-yard rushing touchdown. But ultimately, they lose the game. And J.K.Dobbins left this game with a knee injury. We don't know what the severity of it is just yet, but it's unfortunate because, he's dealt with a ton of injuries over the course of his career, and he's had a nice season. He's looked really good, and, you just hope this is not something that's going to keep him out, because the Chargers are going to need him. He's been a big part of their offense. So hopefully everything's okay there. Also, another big thing with the Chargers last night, Quinn Johnston. How many drop passes last night with him? And this was a problem last year. And now he's had a bounce-back season for them, for the Chargers, but last night, that kind of reminded you of his rookie season. He had some critical drops that maybe could have made this a different game. But the Ravens, to me, are just the better team. And, the Chargers coming in, they had one of the best defenses in the league. And the Ravens' rushing attack shredded them. They ran the ball in total for 212 yards. You had 140 by Derrick Henry. You had 55 yards by Justice Hill, which the 51-yard touchdown run helped. Another 15 by Lamar Jackson. It was going to... They had their hands full last night. And, Lamar Jackson didn't throw for a ton of yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. He had the great throw to Bateman for the touchdown in the first half. Zay Flowers was their leading receiver. He had 62 yards. Mark Andrews had 44. Rashad Bateman had 43. Ravens defense had 4 sacks of Justin Herbert. Herbert took some big hits last night, between him getting sacked and scrambling, getting tackled. So you don't like to see that. You don't want to see Herbert get banged up. But, to me, the Ravens are just a better team here, in my opinion. The Chargers have played well, but, for me, the Ravens, they're in that tier above the Chargers. And, Scott Van Pelt was talking about it on the post game when I watched a little bit of it. And he kind of said, look, he doesn't want to be that guy, but you look at some of the opponents that the Chargers have beaten. This was probably the best team, besides maybe the Chiefs, that they played all year. I mean, you look at their 4-game winning streak. It came against the Saints, the Browns, the Titans, and, the Bengals have an elite offense, but their defense is one of the worst in the league. So, and then their first 2 wins of the year came against the Panthers and the Raiders. So, he did kind of point that out and say, look, Ravens are coming in with that running game that the Chargers really haven't seen all year yet. And they got ran over. So, but I still think the Chargers are a good team. But I don't think they're... I've never looked at them as maybe being championship caliber. I thought maybe, and it could still be the case where, they could give teams problems in the playoffs. But I never looked at this team as, being in that championship level tier. I definitely do think that they're going to make the playoffs, the way things are headed right now. But this was a test for them, and they kind of fell short. They were up 10-0, but then the offense, similar to what happened last week, kind of disappeared for a while. And you were kicking field goals, for the second half, most of the second half, and then you scored the touchdown at the end. That can't happen. But the Chargers, to me, are still a team that's, a year away. And they're going to continue to add to this roster. John Harbaugh is going to continue to, or Jim Harbaugh, sorry, got them mixed up. Jim Harbaugh is going to continue to build this roster up, and they're going to be a very good team for a long time. But, they just went up against a better team, and John Harbaugh is 3-0 against Jim. They matched up in the 2011 regular season, the Super Bowl, and here. I did bring up another matchup that I thought they went against each other, but I think it was the year after Jim Harbaugh left the 49ers, and I think it was Jim Tom Sula. He was the head coach of the Niners when they went up against the Ravens. So yeah, but I mean, all the matchups have been close. I mean, this ended up being a one-possession game, even though it really should have been a two-possession game. The Super Bowl obviously was close, and the regular season matchup, I think the final score, the Ravens won like 16-6. But yeah, the matchups are usually close, but John always gets the best of Jim. It was kind of like with Peyton and Eli. Peyton always got the best of Eli. Eli was never able to beat him. But maybe they match up. These two coaches match up again in the playoffs. We'll see. But yeah, no, this was a good win for the Ravens. This was a bounce back win for them, and they'll be taking on the Eagles next week, which is going to be a great game. Really looking forward to that. You're going to have, the two best signings of the offseason with Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry going at it. I think after this week, Saquon Barkley kind of has a leg up on Derrick Henry when it comes to at least Offensive Player of the Year. People are talking about Barkley being in the MVP conversation, and he absolutely should be. My thing is this, though, when it comes to the MVP. Last year, I thought you could have gave it to a non-quarterback, and they didn't do it. So I don't really know. I mean, we'll see, but I still think quarterback is probably going to end up winning the award. And, either Henry or Barkley is going to get Offensive Player of the Year. That's how I look at it. But we'll see. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Giants. We'll talk about Daniel Jones getting released. We'll talk about their performance on Sunday against the Buccaneers. And what Malik Neighbors had to say at the end of the game, or after the game. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.